Hello everyone, this is Greyshot17, and today I'm going over the DOC and British battle group, the Espionage and Australian Light Infantry. The reason being is I want to just bring up, or Australian Defense. The reason being is I kind of want to go over their impact on 4v4 and address the certain abilities and stuff as it's been implemented, or like it's been used in 3v3 and 4v4 over the last couple weeks. I didn't want to do it immediately because there's really no point. For a lot of these battle groups, it takes players some time to figure out the battle group and figure out the maximum efficiency for a lot of this stuff. So I'm coming at it from a 3v3, 4v4 perspective, and what units have been very good, what has kind of been pushed to the wayside, at least in the 3v3, 4v4 aspect, and maybe address some things that will likely change. I will also incorporate some things that they're going to be implementing in a patch in early May, but note that a lot of those patch notes don't really affect a lot of the key units in these separate battle groups. And in case you're wondering, well, Greyshot, why do you bring up that potentially one of these battle groups, or both, are broken? Well, if we go back and look at history, we look at the advanced infantry for the Americans and the coastal reserve for the Wehrmacht. And both of them still have things that maybe needs to be addressed or looked at further because it's still having a massive impact. Going with the Americans, I think Rangers has been a prevalent, very powerful unit. Rangers are still, even with the cost to make them, very potent. They, especially with the upgrades in the battle group, you have Rangers that, again, get suppression, have bonus abilities with bazookas, but each model can hold a different weapon. So 5 models, 5 weapons, times that by 3 or 4, especially if the American's playing conservative, and you can see how this could scale up to be something that is just a brutal mess. Even when you're fighting it with armor, you're gonna need artillery or something to break up that squad and make the American player lose manpower, which again is a cost benefit, but it is something that for my people I've talked to in 3v3 and 4v4 spheres, that is still a very powerful unit that it's maybe overperforming, especially with the abilities, right? Besides that, you go over to the Coastal Reserve, and the bunkers, stuff like that, have been addressed. I feel like the AT's range needs to be brought a little more back, but that's just me. The biggest issue that I hear and I'm seeing is the coastal artillery, artillery officer's ability to just call in a circle of doom, especially with higher veterancy being bigger, every 30 seconds. Truth be told, those are the current issues, right? That's after multiple patches and stuff with those separate battle groups. We're going to be talking about the new battle groups and addressing those. So let's get to Australian defense. And the first one we'll talk about is the Australian Light Infantry, which I think is good. I think it's a solid infantry unit. It's not overperforming. It fits its role well. Very long, medium to long range infantry that has no anti-armor really potential, but does a very good job at holding back infantry and being a pretty powerful unit in its own right. We have the 2-pounder AT gun. That is the next choice, and that one, I've seen the 2-pounder actually used quite well. Again, this thing puts up a fight. It's like 220 manpower, but the thing, even though it is like not the best penetration, still does quite a bit. And having that early AT, because CoH3, you really want to have that AT gun out by about 6 to 8 minutes, because that's when you start seeing, for the British, Stuarts, for the Americans, Greyhounds, for the DOC, even sooner with the verbal wind, right? Potential Ostwind rush for the Wehrmacht, or a number of other things. L6s, all for the DOC, all sorts of stuff. You're gonna see that light armor out, and you need anti-tank. Having that out's been effective, but it's not overdoing itself, right? It's a good support, especially if you combined it with its specials to just annoy armor. Either way, I think that it's not overperforming. I don't see spam use of it like other AT guns in CoH's history. So overall, it's a plus. Same thing with vehicle over repair. I've just seen it used as taking the extra hit, but still, it's pretty good. And if you're not going to go emplacement spam, which surprisingly, I was expecting to see the Brits emplacement spam really take center stage and become a nuisance, but I think because of changes to how artillery works with the Stuka and other things and kind of making that slightly better, you're not seeing that, at least for right now. I'm seeing the, west being used a little bit more. I'm seeing that stuff to kind of counteract the emplacement stuff for the allies, which is making sure these defensive tactics and hold the line aren't being abused, and you're seeing this massive spam. So I think actually right now that side of the Australian tree is actually working pretty well. Now, we switch over to the supply truck. That's on the other side of the tier. And again, that's, 2 command points where the Australian elite infantry you can deploy immediately. So, for those who don't know, the truck essentially goes out to a point, collects resources, brings it back, and you get bonuses. If it's like a fuel right outside your base, you get like 25 fuel. And usually it takes about, for that one, I think, about 2.5 minutes. For one that's like really far out, it took like, I think, 3.5 minutes. Right? And it's 150 manpower. So you're in that one for the longest range I tested with like 5. You're looking at like, I think it was 45 fuel. That little boost could really help out players trying to rush out Stuarts or trying to get that early edge and maybe getting munitions. But I think they're buffing it because, again, right now it's not really being used because of the other resource impact, which is reinforced resource caches. Now, upping the HP of a resource cache is a nice thing, but if it's under fire, you're in a bit of hot water because usually you build caches usually around points around your base, and if they're already under fire, most likely they're going to die. They don't really last long if the enemy's there because it takes a while for your troops to retreat, heal up, and get back. But the cost is 37% cheaper, which 25% for Air and Sea, and you automatically build it. The Royal Engineers have to build this thing, but because of how long it takes to kill and the cheapness of it, that's where it comes into handy. Sure, the supply truck is great, but also it's a bit of a gamble because if the enemy sneaks a unit behind, kills it, right, they get the resources. So if they, example, drop a Fallschirmjäger because they can see the path and kill that truck, they get the resources, right? Or they stop you from getting yours as well. This thing is so cheap that it's like, okay, do I want to go for the short-term initial investment, 150, or pay less and potentially have that scale longer, right? Because sure, you have to keep using the truck, where in this case you just build the resource cache and you deal with it, right? So that's why I think you're not seeing that supply truck do the run as much in like maps and 3v3 and 4v4, but you are seeing people use the reinforced supply caches in mass to help their team out. I wouldn't change it, but I think that the change to the cost and the speed of the supply truck is why they're doing it, because it doesn't make sense for a lot of team games for going with a supply truck than the other. That also means the artillery tripwire. I get why in, let's say, a 1v1, you would kind of go for that, right? But you're not really seeing it in a 4v4. Probably using that because you want more map control, especially with so many times the enemy's going to take the positions. You build that down, you can cause them more havoc and delay that. So in a 1v1, that's probably the way to go, where in a team game where you have more defense over your caches, the other one's more to go. Because again, you want to help your team, and having a cheap cache put down for a long term, especially over caches or positions that have like, oh god, 16 munitions and then you boost it to 24 or something like that, right? That's a lot of resources, and then that's 8 extra munitions for 4 people. That's 32 munitions per turn, and then you times it by 5 and you're looking at 150. And then we have the 2 big ones, the Charge Creeping Barrage and the Archer. The Archer is weaker, but it's damn potent against Tiger tanks or bigger armored units, which is definitely something the British needed. I know they have the 17-pounder, but having something a little bit more mobile that can penetrate that Tiger armor consistently without fear of infantry, necessarily killing it or shooting it or just, it just dying because it can't move, is a nice win. The Creeping Barrage is also very effective for its cost. Like, it is extremely effective at clearing infantry out of the way. So really, if you're seeing like a lot of defenses and stuff like that, you just want to remove, doing a recon and then using Charge Creeping Barrage, very effective at removing like artillery in the back lines or killing stuff in the back or just clearing whole sections of the map like buildings and such. Where the Archer, yeah, sure, you could clear bunkers and other things with recon and other assistance, and it's good to have a tank that's not too expensive, all things considered, especially for its role and how much damage it does. It is weaker, right? I've seen artillery and stuff obliterate the Archer, but it's still a very useful tool. So yeah, I think this is probably the most balanced battle group they've probably released so far. And I'm very thankful. I'm very happy that this came out and it is like this, because I don't think it's... Again, I'm curious to see your comments, but for my opinion, the British Force Australian Defense right now is a plus. It's not overpowered, but it adds enough variety and differences into the gameplay department that allows you to change up your game, change up the different tactics you do, fills in fundamental needs that the British had, and just keeps things fun and interesting without... For example, the British forces on release in CoH3, where you just had a bunch of SimCity happening, and as the Axis, you couldn't really do much against it. It was just too powerful. Speaking of the Axis, let's get to the Dock Battlefield Espionage. This one's weird. This one's already been patched, because I could automatically say it did come out broken, because of the Funk Panzerwagen, which is... It's weird how this is so powerful, and yet either makes... or empowers other units to murder you brutally. Let me explain. So the Funk Panzerwagen has all sorts of abilities. Let's go over some of the less known stuff. It can capture territory. You can deploy this for, I think it's like 220, or you can just switch over a half-track that, again, most likely you deploy with a support gun or the AT gun. So you turn that half-track for free, then it can camouflage all the troops within a perimeter. This has been shrunken a little bit, and I know they're trying to figure out some additional stuff in order for detection. However, it's still completely, doesn't matter if they're out in negative cover, or not negative cover, in no cover, the units are still undetectable because of the Funk Wagon. You can still see that, but any infantry was camouflaged. It was originally vehicles, which, yeah, I can see why that's bad. Have 4 Panzer IVs or a Tiger tank just appear out of nowhere. It's like, where the hell did he come from? Yeah, no, they've already reduced it. I think they might have to make some alterations further, because again, with some other stuff we'll see, for example, the advanced ambush training, where it makes it even more potent for troops to just come out of nowhere and hit you with a first strike. Yeah, they need to do some tweaking with it, because yeah, the Dock I don't want to say Wolverines, but the army that comes out of nowhere just to hit you from the side is very annoying, which is why you're probably seeing in 4v4 3v3 a lot more recon packages, for example the Brits, more flares or recon being done, because they don't want this army to just sneak up on them and just overwhelm them. Which again, you can still see the Funk unit, but everything else around it's camouflaged. So, but also speaking of camouflage, the Goliath, which I've seen hit and miss. I've seen units automatically detect it. So it's not like CoH3 or not CoH3, CoH2, where you had a little, I feel like you had a little more time in order for the unit to go and hit, right? Because the detection was shorter, so you had more time for it to come up and then kill the units. Here, the units detected a little bit earlier, so unless you're in smoke or something, it's a little bit harder. I've still gotten kills. I've killed a lot of units, including my own units, insert here, with the Funk Panzerwagen's Goliath ability. In Goliath, 100 munitions, perfect cost, especially for its damage. It kills bridges, can kill armor. It's good. It's good. I love having the Goliath back. That's great. But combine that, again, this is all the stuff I just mentioned, plus this thing places cheap mines and also anti-vehicle mines. Plus, this thing deploys that one as an ability in which it automatically generates munitions. 5 munitions per turn, which helps, I guess, make Goliaths more viable. But also, just think about that as extra resources you're getting. Fantastic, but I understand why they've altered it already, and I think they will continue to alter it, or at the very least improve detection to stop its detection circle, the hide units, from being so potent, right? But I have seen this already in, again, 1v1 and 4v4 for capturing territory, for helping with large armies move. Like, having a bunch of infantry just pop out of nowhere and just hit stuff, especially with another ability, Plunder, which is in the other tree, which I'll get to because we'll get to the intel stuff before, but the essentially, if it's a dead vehicle, you salvage it and your unit gets a free weapon. Weapons in the game typically cost between 50, 60 munitions. A lot of the Dock ones can be up to 100 munitions. So again, it's expensive. So you're thinking, instead of like CoH2 where you salvage a unit and it's like 5 munitions, you're like, here you go. This is like you're finding like a diamond every time you salvage a vehicle. It's quite good. Now, again, you can only use it for the slots a dock unit has for a weapon. So, example, 2 weapon slots, you already have them, you can't plunder. But to quickly boost your army up, especially with like assault grenadiers getting Thompsons and then just closing the gap and just murdering an army very close range, it's genuinely something to fear. Now, the other side of the advanced ambush tactics is the anti-tank incendiary munitions, which actually I kind of like. Sure, it is with an anti-tank gun, and it does make the anti-tank grenades better, right? So the anti-tank grenades are, I think, 50% better with use with this. Maybe it's just me, but again, between the two, especially if you're really going with the detection or like hidden army, you're gonna go with the advanced ambush. It's good. I like slowly bringing down the infantry, the armor, but again, it doesn't kill it, but it's still a nice bonus. Then you switch it over to the advanced ambush, and you just automatically have it when a unit is, you know, undetectable. And that one is just, you flip on a switch. It doesn't cost anything to go invisible, so it's just a nice bonus. Now we move on to Operation Scorpion, and this one is not really all that interesting because, sure, it camouflages your armor, and then it reduces the speed, but when they attack, they hit with a faster fire rate for about 15 seconds. And then if you lose the armor, you get 25% resource back. And that lasts for 60 seconds. I feel like the bonuses you get aren't necessarily worth it. I get the camouflage. Like, having an armor group, like, pop out of nowhere could be extremely detrimental. But I feel like that's a very... how do I say this? Especially in a 4v4 environment, most likely all areas are going to have some enemy presence. So as soon as the armor attacks, they're going to hit that first line. So you're not really going to see them hit like the bulk of, let's say, a 4v4, you know, engagement, especially if they're pushing deep behind the line something in 15 seconds. So it is cool, but I can see this being more, again, a 1v1 thing. But 4v4, the bonuses and other things you get aren't just not necessarily as interesting to a 4v4 3v3 player as other abilities. So unlike Creeping Barrage, where it's like, okay, it's like that or the Archer, it's like truly, it's like, damn, what do I pick? It's one of those things where it's like, well, I'm kind of just, I'll unlock it, but it'll be one of the last unlocks I do. Now on the other side, we have the Sector Subterfuge and the Intel Disruption Beacon. The Intel Disruption Beacon takes 1, right? And again, that's not bad, again, if for what you get in terms of like detection, all the other stuff. But the problem is, I feel like the Sector Subterfuge, especially in 4v4, is chef's kiss because of just how annoying it is. It's 75, both require manpower, 75 manpower, but the Sector Subterfuge, if you put it down anywhere in the territory, and this is the big thing, anywhere, reduces it by it's like 75 or plus more percent. So I've seen it where the enemy on a 5 fuel is getting 1 fuel. That's it. Now, it is interesting. If the territory is cut off, you don't get anything. So that you has to be connected to the enemy. But you, not your team, but you will get the resources from that. And the entire enemy team is only getting like, you know, a quarter or less. It is just the insanity for impact. And unlike the British, where I mentioned like that truck is going to you, and it's like, you know, you want to be a team player. This still helps your team because it's messing up the enemy team, right? So it does have that impact. And then here's the problem. On maps like Steppes or maps like Magano Gap or others where it's a lot bigger, it's a pain trying to find this beacon. I've seen a couple of my allies just place it all along the enemy position, just have a unit quickly make it, and just run. And the enemy's just looking there and sending units, so like going back and forth, scanning over the environment, trying to find this beacon. But they're losing so much, and that player is getting so many resources that it doesn't matter if they're on other portions of the map, they're not getting as many resources. They're getting it all from the enemy still. So, yeah, I feel like Sector Subterfuge right now is doing very well, and especially with the low cost, is being the obvious pick. I would assume that they're probably going to at least give it 1 command point, or probably stop, not have it be automatic here soon. That's just my thoughts on it, especially with the impact it's having in 3v3 and 4v4. But hey, and I can definitely see where Intel is definitely being better for its, like, again, just causing, like, oh, okay, I can see what's going on the mini-map for enemy forces, but it does cost 1 command point. I feel like people are like, well, it's 0, and I can mess it with the enemy, and I can mess with the entire enemy team, and I get resources. So how can this go bad for me? So, yeah, no, I feel like that's the obvious pick. Plunder and Transfer Depot, that's, okay, Plunder, it's beneficial to improve your army, right? Especially for weapons. So if you're looking for potentially cheap weapons, especially if you're versing an enemy that's spamming stewards or something else, and you deal with that, and you're like, oh, there's a bunch of free carcasses, well, I guess I'll, use them for my own benefit. I could see that being beneficial. For the Transfer Depot, again, it's something that's like, all right, you can exchange manpower for resources. Maybe later in the game that would work, right? Because Plunder is better earlier to upgrade your men. Transfer Depot is better later, and also building a cache. So it's one of those things where it's like, in a 4v4, it's like maybe you would use it once you upgrade the armor you want, or you're trying to rush for resource. But it's, Hey, again, if you use Transfer Depot a lot more, I'm very curious, but at least from the games I've seen and played, it hasn't had the impact that Sector Subterfuge has for resources and generation of that area, especially for the player that's getting the resources. But then we move on to Disruption, Operation, and Firestorm. This is probably a weird one. I can see Disruption Operation being better in a 1v1 environment because it limits the area your enemy forces, the enemy forces that can see, and also their accuracy. So it makes them very easy for an army to just pop out of nowhere and hit them a lot harder. So that area, it's like, oh, benefit. But it only, I think it's 60 seconds as well, and it's outdone but on Firestorm. And Firestorm is just launching fire down to a position, it slows infantry, and it burns anything in that area, which may not sound that big of a deal, but for its cost, and especially in a 4v4 and 3v3 when the command points are much more of a constant fight, and you're trying to kill the enemy infantry, putting this down as like an area of effect and it lasts 45 seconds, and the enemy's just sitting there, it's like, well, we can't send infantry there, they're just gonna die. All right, what armor? Can we send any armor? Well, the British and the Americans have some vehicles that can capture territory natively, but again, if it's a heavily contested point, any enemy tank or AT will kill that stuff pretty quick, right? Like, you're not sending a 4x4, it's going to live. You could smoke it, but there's still fire, and it's still going to do damage to your stuff, and it's not really worth it. So, for an area of effect that's just constant of a nuisance, Firestorm has proven itself to be very effective, and I've seen it be used. So, if you're being better tactically, yeah, Disruption Operation in 1v1, I see it. But in 4v4 and 3v3, you're really going to go Firestorm. Is it last a little too long for its own good? I don't think so. Maybe just you need to upgrade maybe the cost of it, or something along those lines, right? That, because it is 45 seconds of pure fire just sitting on a point. But it is a good area of effect, and I kind of relate it to CoH3's Fear Propaganda or Incendiary Barrage. But yeah, that's everything in the Doc Battle Group. And again, there's high highs and some lower lows, but I think they're trying to make alterations to tweak it a bit better. But again, nothing is as severe as the worst of the Rangers or the Coastal Reserve. I think both of them have been very good battle groups, and they're still tweaking. But I do like how in both you can see the benefits in a 1v1 match and a 4v4 match. So, good stuff there. Again, I'm kind of curious to see your perspective, because I can only give my opinion on stuff from my point of view. I want to know your point of view on a lot of this stuff. So please leave in the comments down below, and I'm curious to see what you guys have, because again, having a discussion on this stuff, especially from multiple people's perspective, helps out immensely, because again, if it's something that it is, being a negative impact on the community, it helps to inform Relic, especially before a patch that's coming out in the next couple weeks. So, I'll be going over that patch in the next video, but until then, thank you all for listening to me, thank you all for watching, hopefully you enjoyed, like, subscribe if you want to support the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Hello everyone, this is Greyshot17, and before y'all go, let me give a special shout out to Patreon supporters Joey G240, Milam, Big Cooch, Aphyria, Ace, Pyro Shark, Tonybee 95, Epic Pleb. Thank you all for your incredible support in helping me grow my channel and support my channel and everything I do. Thank you, and to the rest of you, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.